At first, Liam thought the red light belonged to an old heater. Something electrical, maybe. That's what he told his girlfriend, Sophie, the first night they noticed it glowing beneath the neighbor's house. A small, dim red light shining through the basement window across the street at exactly 3 a.m. every night, without fail. 3 weeks later, police would surround that same house before sunrise while half the neighborhood watched from behind locked doors. But by then, Liam already knew something terrible had been happening underground. It started shortly after they moved into the neighborhood. The house sat on a quiet suburban street outside Manchester, England. The kind of neighborhood that looked completely normal during daytime. Small gardens, clean sidewalks, families walking dogs in the evening. Nothing strange. Liam and Sophie loved it immediately. After years of apartment living, finally owning a small home together felt unreal. Their neighbor's house sat directly across from them. Old, narrow, always quiet. According to the moving company driver, an older man lived there alone. Bit strange, the driver said casually while unloading boxes, but harmless. At first, Liam barely noticed him. The curtains always stayed closed. No visitors. No lights except one dim lamp near the upstairs hallway. But after the first week, Sophie mentioned something strange during breakfast. "Were you awake last night?" Liam shook his head. "I saw a light outside around 3 in the morning. "What kind of light?" "Red." That night, Liam stayed awake intentionally. At exactly 3:02 a.m., the basement window across the street glowed red, not bright. Just dim enough to illuminate the lower part of the house. Liam frowned. The light lasted nearly 20 minutes before shutting off again. Weird, but not terrifying. Not yet. The following night, it happened again. 3:02 a.m., red light, exactly the same. Liam stood near the bedroom window watching carefully. The basement window was tiny, almost level with the ground. But through the glass, he thought he saw movement. A shadow crossing slowly behind the red glow, then the light shut off again. Sophie looked uncomfortable afterward. "You think he's okay in there?" "Probably just some old guy working on something." But even Liam sounded uncertain. Because who worked in a basement every night at the exact same time? A few nights later, Sophie woke him suddenly around 3:15 a.m. Listen, Liam sat upright. At first he heard nothing. Then thud, a heavy banging sound from somewhere outside. Thud, thud, slow, rhythmic. The noise came from across the street, from underneath the neighbor's house. Sophie whispered, "That's the basement." The banging continued for nearly a minute, then stopped abruptly. Silence filled the neighborhood again. Liam walked toward the window carefully. The red light still glowed beneath the house, and for one horrifying second, he thought he saw fingers pressed against the basement glass from inside. He stepped backward immediately. "What?" Sophie asked. Liam kept staring. Nothing there now, only red light. The next morning, Liam finally saw the neighbor outside for the first time. An older man wearing dark gloves while dragging trash bins toward the curb. Thin, pale, unnaturally tired looking. Liam tried being friendly. "Morning." The man stopped slowly, then looked directly at him. The expression on his face felt wrong instantly. Not angry, just empty, like he hadn't spoken to another person in years. After several seconds, the man quietly replied, "You should close your curtains at night." Then walked back inside without another word. That sentence stayed with Liam all day. That night, he kept checking the basement window repeatedly. 3:02 a.m. The red light returned. But this time something changed. The basement window was slightly open. Cold air drifted visibly through the gap. Liam stared at it nervously. Then the banging started again. Thud, 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 louder than before. Sophie grabbed his arm. "Someone's down there." The banging suddenly stopped. Then came a different sound. Scratching, slow scratching against metal or concrete. Liam felt his heartbeat speeding up. The basement window slowly opened wider, just a few inches. Then a face appeared behind the glass. Sophie screamed instantly. A person stood inside the basement, staring directly at their house. Not the old man. Someone else. Pale face, sunken eyes, expressionless. The figure didn't blink, didn't move, just stood there beneath the red light watching them silently. Liam grabbed his phone immediately. What the hell? The figure suddenly stepped backward into darkness. Gone. The basement window slammed shut hard enough to echo across the street. The red light turned off instantly. Darkness swallowed the house. Neither Liam nor Sophie slept afterward. The next morning, Sophie wanted to call police immediately, but Liam hesitated. What would he even say? "I saw someone in a basement." Still, something felt deeply wrong now. That afternoon, Liam searched online for information about the neighbor. He found almost nothing. No social media, no family, no records except ownership documents dating back nearly 20 years. But one local forum mentioned something strange. Years earlier, another family living nearby reported hearing noises beneath the house late at night. The thread ended suddenly after only a few comments. That night, Liam stayed awake downstairs near the front window. At exactly 3:02 a.m., the red light returned again. But this time, the basement door beside the house slowly opened. Liam stared in disbelief. A man stepped out from underground, then another, then another. 3 different people emerged from the basement and hurried toward a black van parked farther down the street. All of them looked thin, terrified, disoriented. Liam immediately started recording on his phone. Then the old neighbor appeared behind them, watching. The red basement light glowed behind him while one terrified woman looked briefly toward Liam's house. Their eyes met, and she mouthed one silent word: "Help." Liam called police immediately. But before officers arrived, the old man slowly turned toward Liam's window and smiled. The police raid happened less than 20 minutes later. Squad cars flooded the street. Officers forced open the basement entrance. Neighbors watched from their windows while floodlights illuminated the house. Liam and Sophie stood frozen near their front door. Then paramedics began leading people out of the basement, one after another, 5 people, all alive, all severely malnourished. Police later discovered the old man had been keeping vulnerable runaways locked beneath the house for years. The red basement light? Investigators believed it was used to prevent neighbors from noticing movement through the basement windows at night. But according to Liam, the part that still terrified him most happened afterward. Weeks later, while giving an official statement, one detective quietly admitted something strange. During the raid, officers found deep scratch marks covering the inside of the basement door, as if people had desperately tried digging their way out. And carved repeatedly into the concrete wall beside the red light were the words, "He knows when you watching nobody in the neighborhood remembered seeing Mrs. Alden outside. Not once, not collecting mail, not buying groceries, not even standing in her own yard, and yet every night lights moved through her house until sunrise." At first, Noah thought people were exaggerating. Every neighborhood had one strange resident people loved gossiping about. But after moving into the small suburban street outside Portland, Oregon, he quickly realized something genuinely felt wrong about the house next door. The property looked older than the others around it. Faded white paint, overgrown hedges, curtains permanently closed. Even during daytime, the place looked dark. Noah was a university student renting a small house alone while finishing online classes. The area was quiet, almost too quiet. That's why he noticed the strange patterns so quickly. Every night around midnight, lights appeared inside Mrs. Alden's house. Not normal lights. They moved, slowly drifting room to room like someone carrying lanterns through darkness. At first, Noah assumed she just had insomnia, but after 2 weeks, something started bothering him. He never saw her leave. Ever. Not once. And yet the lights continued every single night. One evening while checking mail, Noah asked his elderly neighbor across the street about her. The woman immediately looked uncomfortable. "You mean Evelyn Alden?" Noah nodded. "She lives alone?" The woman hesitated. As far as anyone knows. That answer stayed with him. As far as anyone knows. Later that night, Noah sat near the living room window watching rain hit the street outside. At exactly 12:14 a.m., a light turned on inside Mrs. Alden's upstairs hallway, then another downstairs, then another near the kitchen. The lights moved slowly through the house, like multiple people walking inside. Noah leaned closer to the window. That's when he saw the silhouette, someone standing behind the upstairs curtain watching his house, tall, perfectly still. Noah immediately looked away instinctively. When he looked back a few seconds later, the figure was gone. The next morning he checked outside again. No footprints, no activity, nothing. Mrs. Alden's mailbox overflowed with unopened letters while weeds climbed the front steps. The house looked abandoned in daylight. That contradiction began eating at him. How could someone live there without ever leaving? 3 nights later, Noah woke suddenly around 2 a.m. after hearing something metallic outside. He looked through the bedroom window toward Mrs. Alden's property. A delivery van sat parked beside the curb. 2 men carried large black bags toward the house. Noah frowned. The men moved quickly, silently. Neither knocked on the door. Instead, the front door slowly opened before they reached it. A pale hand appeared briefly in darkness, beckoning them inside. Then the door shut again. Noah felt genuinely unsettled now. The next day, curiosity finally overcame him. He walked across the street and knocked on Mrs. Alden's door. No answer, but as he turned to leave, he heard movement inside. Slow footsteps crossing the hallway, then whispering, several voices. Noah froze near the porch. The whispers stopped instantly. Then a woman's voice quietly spoke through the door. "Go away." The voice sounded weak, shaky, old. Noah stepped backward immediately. "Sorry, I just wanted to introduce myself." Silence answered him. Then came another voice from deeper inside the house. Male. "Who is it?" Noah's stomach tightened. He thought she lived alone. The old woman answered softly, "Nobody." The footsteps retreated deeper into the house. Noah returned home feeling uneasy. That night, the lights stayed on longer than usual. Around 3 a.m., Noah noticed movement again behind the upstairs curtains. This time, there were multiple figures standing inside, watching the street silently. One looked extremely tall. Another appeared unnaturally thin. Noah grabbed his phone and zoomed in with the camera. The image blurred badly through rain-covered glass, but he managed to capture one disturbing detail. None of the figures moved naturally. They stood completely still, too still, like mannequins positioned behind windows. Then suddenly one figure tilted its head toward him. Noah nearly dropped the phone. The movement looked wrong, jerky, unnatural. The upstairs light switched off instantly. Darkness swallowed the house. The following morning, utility workers arrived outside Mrs. Alden's property. Noah stepped outside while they checked electrical lines near the sidewalk. One worker casually asked, "You know if anyone's been staying there recently?" Noah pointed toward the house. "The old woman?" The worker frowned. "What old woman?" "The owner, Mrs. Alden." The two workers exchanged confused looks. Then one quietly said, "Man, this house hasn't had active electricity for over 6 months." Noah laughed nervously. "That's impossible." But the workers showed him the records. Power disconnected. Water shut off. No usage reported for months. Noah felt cold all over, because every night he watched lights moving through that house. That evening, fear kept him from looking outside after dark. But around 1:30 a.m., he heard something that forced him toward the window. Singing, soft humming drifting across the street. The lights inside Mrs. Alden's house glowed again, but this time the front door stood open. Noah stared at the darkness inside the hallway. Then he saw her, Mrs. Alden standing motionless near the doorway. Pale face, thin grey hair, dark hollow eyes. She slowly raised one arm toward him, inviting him closer. Noah backed away from the window immediately. Then his phone buzzed loudly. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Static crackled softly through the speaker. Then an old woman whispered, "Please stop watching the house." Noah's blood turned cold. "How did you get this number?" Heavy breathing answered him. Then the woman whispered something horrifying. "They don't like being seen." The call disconnected. At that exact moment, every light inside Mrs. Alden's house shut off at once. Darkness consumed the property. Noah locked every door in his house afterward. But around 4 a.m., he heard footsteps slowly crossing his front porch outside. Then a quiet knock against the window beside his bed. Knock, knock, knock. Noah forced himself not to look. The next morning, police cars surrounded Mrs. Alden's house. Noah watched nervously from across the street while officers entered the property. Hours later, one detective finally approached him. "What exactly did you see at night?" Noah explained everything. The lights, the figures, the voices. The detective listened silently, then revealed something horrifying. Police found Evelyn Alden dead inside the house, in her bedroom. According to medical examiners, she had been dead for nearly 7 months. But what truly terrified Noah came next. The detective quietly admitted officers found signs that multiple people had recently been living inside the house. Fresh food, wet footprints, recently moved furniture. But despite searching every room, they never found anyone else. And when Noah later checked the blurry photo he took through the upstairs window that night, he realized something horrifying. Every figure inside the house was staring directly at him, except Mrs. Alden, because she was staring at something standing behind him outside his own window. At first, Daniel thought the apartment next door was being renovated. That's what the noises sounded like. Furniture dragging across wooden floors, heavy impacts against walls, low muffled voices late at night. Annoying, but normal, at least until the screaming started. The apartment building stood in a quiet district outside Berlin, Germany. Old structure, thin walls, cheap rent. Daniel had moved there after accepting a temporary engineering contract nearby. The landlord warned him immediately about one thing. The walls carry sound very easily. Daniel laughed at the time. After years living beside loud roommates, noise didn't bother him much. But 3 nights after moving in, he woke suddenly around 2:07 a.m. Scrap! Something heavy dragged slowly across the wall beside his bed. Daniel opened his eyes irritably. The sound continued. Scrap! Like a large cabinet being pulled across wooden flooring. Then came whispering. Low voices speaking too quietly to understand. Daniel groaned and checked the clock. 2:07 a.m. He pounded once against the wall. The sound stopped instantly. Silence. Daniel rolled over and went back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. 2:07 a.m. exactly. Dragging furniture. Whispering. This time accompanied by soft knocking sounds. 3 slow knocks from the other side of the wall. Knock. Knock, knock. Daniel sat upright, staring toward the darkness beside him. The knocking repeated. Then silence. The following morning, Daniel mentioned it casually to the landlord while collecting spare keys. The people next door move furniture every night. The landlord frowned immediately. What people? In the apartment beside mine. A strange silence followed. Then the landlord quietly said, "That apartment is empty." Daniel laughed.
No, seriously. I am serious.
The landlord explained apartment 34 had been vacant for nearly 4 years after an elderly tenant died there unexpectedly. Nobody rented it afterward because of plumbing issues and water damage. Daniel felt uneasy immediately. "But I hear voices every night." The landlord shrugged uncomfortably. "Old buildings make sounds." That explanation lasted until the next night, 2:07 a.m. Scrap! The sound violently dragged across the wall again. This time louder, much louder. Daniel climbed out of bed angrily. Enough already! He stormed into the hallway and walked directly to apartment 34. The hallway lights flickered softly overhead. Daniel knocked hard against the neighboring door. No answer. But he immediately noticed something strange. The apartment door had dust along the bottom edge, untouched, like nobody opened it for months. Then he heard movement inside, a loud impact against the floor, followed by whispering. Daniel stepped backward slowly. Someone was definitely in there. He leaned closer toward the door. The whispering suddenly stopped. Then a voice quietly spoke from the other side. "Can you hear us?" Daniel froze. The voice sounded distorted, male and female at the same time somehow. "What?" Silence answered him. Then came 3 knocks from inside the apartment. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel backed away immediately and returned to his apartment. That night he barely slept. At exactly 2:07 a.m., the noises returned again, but this time they came from inside his bedroom walls. Scrap! Daniel bolted upright. The sound moved slowly through the wall beside his bed, like something crawling between the walls. Then whispering began again, closer now, right beside his ear. He grabbed his flashlight and pressed it against the wall. The whispering stopped instantly. Then something knocked back from inside the wall. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel stumbled backward in shock. The next day, he searched online for information about the building. Most records were normal, until he found an old local article from 2018. An elderly tenant named Marta Weiss died inside apartment 34 after neighbors reported hearing screaming late at night. But the article included one disturbing sentence. Several residents claimed they continued hearing movement from the apartment after police sealed the room. Daniel stopped reading immediately. That evening, he bought earplugs hoping to ignore the sounds completely. It didn't help. At 2:07 a.m. exactly, a loud scream exploded through the wall, a woman screaming in absolute terror. Daniel ripped out the earplugs instantly. The scream cut off suddenly. Then came violent banging. Thud, 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 like someone throwing themselves against the walls inside apartment 34. Daniel grabbed his phone and called building security. But while waiting, the screaming started again, this time directly beside him, inside the wall. Daniel backed toward the door in horror. Then the wallpaper near his bed moved slightly. Something pressed outward from beneath it, a hand shape. Human fingers slowly dragging beneath the wallpaper from inside the wall itself. Daniel nearly screamed. The fingers stopped moving. Then a voice whispered softly through the wall, "Open it." Daniel ran from the apartment immediately. Security arrived minutes later. 2 guards searched apartment 34 with Daniel standing nearby in the hallway. The apartment door creaked open slowly. Dust covered everything inside. Furniture hidden beneath white sheets. Mold on the walls. Rotting floorboards. Empty. Completely empty. But Daniel noticed something disturbing immediately. The far bedroom wall contained deep scratch marks covering the wallpaper. Hundreds of them, like someone trapped inside, had clawed at the walls repeatedly. One security guard whispered, "What the hell?" Then all 3 men heard it, knocking from inside the walls. Knock, knock. Knock. The sound moved slowly through the apartment, traveling behind the walls toward them. The guards immediately backed away. Then a woman's voice whispered softly somewhere inside the building structure. "Don't leave." One guard slammed the apartment door shut instantly. Nobody spoke afterward. The landlord finally admitted several previous tenants reported hearing noises from apartment 34 before eventually moving out. But Daniel no longer cared about explanations. He packed his belongings the following morning. Before leaving permanently, he glanced once more toward the neighboring apartment. That's when he noticed something impossible. The dusty front door of apartment 34 now had fresh marks across it, 3 long scratches, and written faintly in the dust near the handle were the words, "We heard you two, Ethan, first noticed the garage because of the lights. Every night around midnight, the old detached garage beside the neighbor's property would suddenly glow from inside. Not brightly, just enough light leaking through cracks in the metal door to reveal movement inside. At first, Ethan assumed the neighbor worked late, maybe fixing cars, maybe woodworking. But after several weeks, he realized something strange. Nobody ever entered the garage during daytime, and the people arriving there at night always looked terrified. Ethan lived in a small rural town in northern Canada. Quiet roads, large properties, long stretches of forest between houses. The kind of place where everyone noticed unusual behavior quickly. The garage belonged to a middle-aged man named Walter Grayson. Most people avoided him, not because he was aggressive, because he was strange. Walter rarely spoke to neighbors, never smiled, always wore dark gloves even during summer. But the truly unsettling part? Every night around midnight, different vehicles arrived at his property. Old vans, dark pickup trucks, cars without visible license plates. The visitors never stayed long, 10 minutes at most. Then they disappeared back into the woods. Ethan became obsessed with watching the garage. At 17 years old, curiosity overpowered common sense. His bedroom window overlooked Walter's backyard perfectly. And one rainy night around 12:40 a.m., he finally saw something horrifying. The garage door lifted slightly, just enough for Ethan to glimpse inside. Someone sat tied to a chair beneath a hanging light. A person, motionless, head lowered. Ethan's entire body went cold. Before he could react, the garage door slammed shut again. The following morning, Ethan considered calling police. But fear stopped him. What if he was wrong? What if he misunderstood what he saw? Still, he couldn't stop thinking about it. That evening, he decided to record the garage with his camera, just in case. At 12:17 a.m., another black van arrived. Walter stepped outside holding a flashlight. 2 other men followed him into the garage, carrying something heavy wrapped in plastic. Ethan zoomed the camera carefully. Rain blurred the image slightly, but he could still hear sounds through the open bedroom window. Metal scraping, muffled voices, a loud bang, then screaming, faint, brief, human. Ethan nearly dropped the camera. The garage door opened slightly again. This time he clearly saw the tied figure struggling in the chair beneath the light. Walter suddenly turned toward Ethan's house, directly toward his bedroom window. Ethan ducked instantly beneath the frame. His heart hammered violently. Had Walter seen him? Several seconds passed. Silence. Then Ethan slowly looked back outside. The garage door was closed again. But now the outside light above the garage had turned on, and Walter stood beneath it, staring toward Ethan's house. Completely motionless. Ethan backed away from the window immediately. He barely slept that night. The next morning, Ethan finally told his father everything. The lights, the screaming, the person tied to the chair. His father looked uneasy but skeptical. Still, he agreed to check the property with Ethan later that afternoon. But when they approached Walter's garage, everything looked normal. Completely normal. No vehicles, no strange smells, nothing. Walter greeted them calmly outside the house. "Can I help you?" Ethan's father awkwardly explained they heard noises during the night. Walter smiled faintly. "I restore furniture late sometimes." Then he opened the garage door willingly. Ethan stared inside in disbelief. Empty, just tools, shelves, old equipment, no chair, no restraints. No signs anyone had been there. Walter looked directly at Ethan. "You kids watch too many horror movies. That should ended everything." But later that night, Ethan checked the camera footage again, and his blood turned cold. The tied figure was still clearly visible in the recording. Pale face, hands restrained, barely moving. The footage proved he wasn't imagining things. Then Ethan noticed something worse. Near the end of the recording, someone else appears briefly inside the garage, standing in darkness behind the tied person, watching Ethan's window. Tall, thin, smiling. Ethan paused the footage repeatedly, trying to understand what he was seeing. Then his phone buzzed loudly. Unknown number. A text message appeared. Stop wreckering the garage. Ethan nearly threw the phone across the room. A second message arrived immediately afterward. We can see you too. Panic flooded through him. He locked his bedroom door instantly. Outside, rain hammered against the windows while darkness swallowed the neighborhood. Then around 1:30 a.m., he heard movement outside his house. Footsteps. Slow footsteps crossing wet grass beneath his window. Ethan forced himself to look. Walter stood outside in the rain, staring directly upward at him, holding a flashlight, not blinking. Then the flashlight slowly tilted downward toward Ethan's camera, sitting on the desk beside the window. Walter smiled and walked back toward the garage. The next morning, Ethan and his father contacted police immediately. Officers searched Walter's property thoroughly, but once again, the garage was empty, no restraints, no blood, nothing illegal. Walter acted calm the entire time, but before police left, one officer quietly pulled Ethan aside. We've something strange. The officer showed him muddy footprints behind the garage leading toward nearby woods. Several different footprints, barefoot, including smaller prints that looked like someone had been dragged. Search teams combed the forest for 2 days afterward. They found nothing. Walter Grayson disappeared 3 nights later, vanished completely. No goodbye, no explanation. His house sat abandoned afterward. But according to Ethan, the part that still keeps him awake happened months later. While reviewing the old garage footage one final time, he noticed something he missed before. The tied person in the chair had been staring directly at Ethan's bedroom window the entire time. And slowly, almost too slowly to notice, they had been smiling. The little girl first noticed the people in the windows. Not her mother, not the neighbors, only 8-year-old Freya. Every night before bed, she would stand beside the living room curtains and stare across the street at the dark blue house facing theirs. And every night, someone inside stared back. At first, her mother thought it was imagination. Children saw strange things all the time, especially after moving somewhere unfamiliar. But 3 months later, police would stand inside that same abandoned house asking one terrifying question. If nobody lived here, then who turned the lights on every night? The neighborhood sat near a quiet coastal town in Norway. Long winters, heavy fog, narrow streets lined with old homes. After her divorce, Ingrid moved there hoping for a peaceful fresh start with Freya. The house was small but beautiful. Directly across the street stood another home, large, old-fashioned, always dark during daytime. According to the realtor, the previous owners rarely interacted with neighbors. They value privacy, he explained casually. Ingrid didn't care. After years living in crowded cities, privacy sounded perfect. The first week passed quietly. Then one night during dinner, Freya suddenly asked, "Why does that family keep watching us?" Ingrid looked up from her plate. "What family?" Freya pointed toward the dark blue house outside. "The people in the windows." Ingrid glanced through the curtains. The house looked completely dark. "No one's there, sweetheart." Freya frowned. "They only stand there at night." A cold feeling settled briefly in Ingrid's stomach, but she ignored it. Children imagined things. Still, later that night around 11 p.m., Ingrid checked the window again before bed and froze. A figure stood behind the upstairs curtain across the street, motionless, watching their house. Ingrid stared for several seconds. Then the figure slowly stepped backward into darkness. She told herself it was normal, just a neighbor, but something about the way the figure moved unsettled her deeply. Too slow, too smooth. The following evening, Freya refused to sleep. "They're standing there again." Ingrid sighed tiredly and walked into her daughter's room. Freya pointed toward the window. This time Ingrid saw 3 figures standing inside the upstairs windows across the street. Tall silhouettes, perfectly still, watching. No lights inside the house, no television glow, nothing. Just dark figures behind curtains. Ingrid pulled the curtain shut immediately. "Don't look over there anymore." "Who are they?" Freya whispered. Ingrid didn't answer. That night around 2 a.m., she woke suddenly after hearing movement outside. Footsteps, slow footsteps crunching through snow near the front yard. Ingrid looked carefully through the blinds. The street outside sat empty beneath pale moonlight. Then she noticed the blue house. The front door stood open. Darkness filled the entrance hallway, and someone stood motionless inside the doorway facing her house. A tall silhouette, watching. Ingrid locked every door afterward. The next morning, she tried introducing herself to nearby neighbors while walking Freya to school. When she mentioned the family across the street, Everyone became strangely quiet. An older neighbor finally said, "That house should be empty." Ingrid frowned. "What do you mean?" "The Halverson family disappeared years ago." The woman explained the family vanished nearly a decade earlier during winter. No signs of violence, no explanation. Police investigated for months before abandoning the case. The house remained empty ever since. Ingrid laughed nervously. "That's impossible. I've seen people inside." The old woman looked genuinely disturbed. "You should keep your curtains closed at night." That sentence stayed in Ingrid's mind all day. That evening, snowstorm clouds rolled across the town while freezing wind rattled the windows. At exactly 9:43 p.m., lights turned on inside the Blue House. Every room illuminated at once. Freya immediately grabbed Ingrid's arm. "They're all looking now." Ingrid slowly approached the living room window and felt terror spread through her chest. At least 7 figures stood inside the house, visible through different windows, all motionless, all facing toward her home. One stood upstairs, another in the kitchen, several near the hallway. None moved, none blinked. The lights suddenly shut off. Darkness swallowed the house instantly. Then Freya whispered, "Mom?" Ingrid turned. Her daughter pointed toward the front porch outside. A figure stood near their mailbox, tall, dark, completely still beneath falling snow, watching the house silently. Ingrid grabbed her phone immediately and called police. But before officers arrived, the figure slowly walked back across the street toward the abandoned Blue House. The front door creaked open, then closed again. Police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers searched the property, while Ingrid and Freya watched nervously from inside their own house. The officers eventually entered the Blue House with flashlights drawn. For nearly 30 minutes, nothing happened. Then one officer suddenly rushed back outside and vomited near the front yard. Ingrid felt sick instantly. Later, detectives explained, the house was completely abandoned, dust everywhere, rotting furniture, frozen pipes, no signs anyone lived there recently. But they found something disturbing upstairs. Fresh footprints, bare footprints, leading from room to room throughout the house, as if multiple people had been standing behind the windows watching the neighborhood. And according to one officer, the strangest detail appeared in the upstairs bedroom. Every curtain had small holes cut into them, perfect viewing holes aimed directly toward Ingrid's house. Police increased patrols afterward, but nothing else happened for several weeks. Then one night, Freya woke screaming. Ingrid rushed into her room immediately. "What happened?" Freya pointed trembling toward the window. "The little boy was inside my room." Ingrid turned on the lights. Nobody there, but near the bedroom window, fresh wet footprints crossed the wooden floor. Small footprints, like a child had been standing beside Freya's bed. And outside across the street, the upstairs window of the Blue House slowly closed by itself. The scratching always started after midnight, slow at first, almost soft enough to ignore. But every night, without fail, it returned beneath the floorboards under Adrian's bed. Scratch, 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 like fingernails dragging through wood. At first, Adrian blamed rats. The basement apartment was cheap, old, and hidden beneath a crumbling house outside Bucharest, Romania. The kind of place you rented only when money was running out. Still, the apartment seemed manageable. Small kitchen, single bedroom, low ceilings, and one very strange rule from the landlord: never open the storage room downstairs. The old landlord said it casually during move-in while handing Adrian the keys. The storage room sat at the far end of the basement hallway behind a rusted metal door secured with 3 heavy locks. Adrian laughed awkwardly. "What's inside?" The old man smiled faintly. "Things better left alone." At the time, Adrian assumed the man was joking. By the 3rd night, he realized he wasn't. The scratching woke him at exactly 12:41 a.m. Scratch, 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 directly beneath the bed. Adrian groaned and switched on the bedside lamp. Silence. He waited. Nothing. The moment he turned the light off again, scratch, much louder. He climbed out of bed immediately and pressed his ear against the floorboards. Something moved underneath him, slowly, dragging across concrete beneath the apartment. Adrian backed away uneasily. The next morning, he asked the landlord about it. "Probably pipes," the old man replied quickly. But his expression changed slightly, almost nervous. That night, the scratching returned again, longer this time, accompanied by soft tapping sounds somewhere deeper in the basement hallway. "Knock! Knock!" Adrian opened the apartment door carefully. The hallway stood dark except for one flickering bulb near the ceiling. At the far end, the storage room door stood motionless in darkness. Then came another sound, whispering, low voices from behind the metal door. Adrian froze, several people whispering rapidly behind the storage room, too muffled to understand. Then silence. Adrian slowly returned inside his apartment and locked the door. Around 2 a.m., he finally drifted asleep, only to wake again hearing someone walking above him. Heavy footsteps crossing the floor upstairs, then dragging noises, like furniture moving. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped directly above his bed. Silence filled the apartment. Then a voice whispered beneath the floorboards, "Adrian." His blood turned cold instantly. The whisper sounded weak, almost human. He sat upright, trembling. The voice came again. "Help me!" Adrian grabbed the lamp and aimed it toward the floor. Nothing. Then violent scratching exploded beneath him. Scratch! The entire bed shook slightly. Adrian jumped backward in panic. The scratching moved rapidly beneath the room, circling under the floor, then stopped near the bedroom wall. Silence. A few seconds later, 3 slow knocks came from inside the wall beside him. Knock, knock, knock. Adrian didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, he searched online for information about the house. Most records were ordinary, until he found an old newspaper archive mentioning the property decades earlier. According to the article, the original owner disappeared mysteriously after neighbors reported hearing screams beneath the house late at night. The basement was never fully investigated because parts of it collapsed years earlier. Adrian felt genuinely sick reading it. That evening, he confronted the landlord directly. "What's inside the storage room?" The old man stared silently for several seconds, then quietly replied, "You hear it too. Not a question. A statement." Adrian stepped backward uneasily. The landlord continued softly, "Whatever you hear after midnight, do not answer it." That night, fear kept Adrian awake. At exactly 12:41 a.m., the scratching began again, but now it sounded different, more aggressive. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then whispering started beneath the floorboards. Dozens of overlapping voices, fast, excited. The floor underneath the bed creaked softly, as if pressure was rising from below. Then one voice suddenly became clear. "Open the door." Adrian's heartbeat hammered violently. The voice came from the hallway, from the storage room. Then the metal door creaked loudly. Adrian froze. Impossible. The landlord kept it locked. Another creak echoed through the hallway outside. Adrian slowly opened his apartment door. The basement corridor looked darker than usual somehow, and at the far end, the storage room door stood slightly open. A narrow gap revealing complete darkness inside. Cold air drifted from the room, along with whispering. Adrian stared in disbelief. Then something whispered from inside the darkness, using his mother's voice. "Adrian!" He nearly stumbled backward, because his mother had died 2 years earlier. The whisper came again. "Closer now. Please help me." Tears filled Adrian's eyes instantly. The voice sounded perfect, exactly like her. Then another voice whispered beneath it. Deeper. Wrong somehow. "He's coming closer." Adrian realized suddenly the first voice wasn't speaking to him. It was speaking to something else inside the room. The darkness beyond the storage doorway shifted slightly. Movement. Tall shapes moving somewhere inside. Adrian backed away slowly. Then the basement lights shut off. Darkness swallowed the hallway completely. The whispering became louder immediately. All around him now. Under the floor, inside the walls, behind the storage room door. "Open it, let us out. We heard you." Something slammed violently against the metal door from inside. Boom. Another impact shook the hallway. Boom. Adrian ran. He sprinted back into his apartment and locked the door while the whispering erupted throughout the basement. The scratching beneath the floor became frantic, like multiple hands clawing upward from underneath the building. Then came footsteps, slow footsteps moving outside his apartment door, stopping directly outside. Silence. A voice whispered softly through the wood. "Adrian!" Not his mother anymore, something else. Something smiling while speaking. Then fingernails scraped slowly down the outside of the apartment door. "Scratch!" Adrian packed a bag immediately. The moment sunrise appeared, he fled the building permanently. The landlord never answered calls afterward, and weeks later, when city inspectors finally entered the abandoned basement, they found the storage room open, empty. But according to one worker, the concrete floor inside contained hundreds of deep scratch marks, a thunderstorm, and carved repeatedly into the walls sitting inside the attic window of the house next door, pointed directly at her bedroom. At first, she told herself it had to be something harmless. Maybe security equipment, maybe old photography gear. But deep down, she already knew something was wrong. because the camera moved every night. Claire lived alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Lyon, France. After years of sharing apartments in the city, finally owning a small house felt peaceful. The neighborhood was calm, almost unnaturally calm. Most homes belonged to older couples who rarely went outside after dark. The only strange property sat directly beside hers, an old narrow house with faded shutters and a steep attic window overlooking Claire's bedroom perfectly. According to neighbors, a man named Luc Morel lived there alone. Quiet, private, rarely seen. Claire barely thought about him until the storm. Around 1 a.m., thunder woke her suddenly. Rain hammered the windows while flashes of lightning illuminated the street outside. That's when she saw it, the silhouette of a camera inside Luc's attic window. Facing her room, Claire sat upright immediately. Another lightning flash lit the neighborhood. The lens reflected briefly. Watching her, a cold feeling spread through her chest. The following morning, the camera was gone. Claire almost convinced herself she imagined it, until the next night. At exactly 11:48 p.m., the camera reappeared. Different position this time. Closer to the center of the attic window. Still aimed directly at her bedroom, Claire shut the curtains immediately. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. The next evening, she casually mentioned the camera to an elderly neighbor while checking mail. The woman frowned instantly. "You should keep your blinds closed." Claire laughed nervously. "Why?" The neighbor hesitated before answering. "People around here have complained about him before." "What kind of complaints?" The woman looked toward Luke's house uneasily. "He watches people." That sentence stayed with Claire all day. That night, she decided to test something. Before bed, she opened her curtains slightly and placed a chair in front of the window to make it look occupied. Then she turned off the lights and waited from the hallway. At 12:16 a.m., the attic window across the street slowly illuminated. The camera appeared again and slowly adjusted downward toward the chair beside Claire's window, tracking movement. Claire's stomach dropped instantly. Someone was actively controlling it. She grabbed her phone and zoomed in. The blurry image revealed something disturbing. There wasn't just one camera in the attic, there were several. Different lenses mounted near the windows aimed toward neighboring homes. Then a shape moved behind them, a tall silhouette crossing slowly through darkness. Claire locked every door immediately afterward. The next morning, she considered calling police, but she had no proof yet, only suspicion. That evening, while returning home from work, she noticed Luke standing beside his mailbox for the first time. Thin, pale, dark gloves despite warm weather. He smiled faintly as Claire approached. "You stay up very late," he said quietly. Claire froze. "How do you know that?" Luke's smile widened slightly. "The light's in your bedroom." Claire walked inside without replying. Her hands shook while locking the door. That night around 2 a.m., her phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. A photo message appeared. Claire opened it. Her blood turned cold instantly. The photo showed her sleeping in bed the previous night. Taken through her bedroom window. Another message arrived immediately afterward. "You should close the curtains." Claire called police immediately. Officers arrived within 20 minutes and searched outside Luke's property. But nobody answered the door. The house looked dark and empty. Police promised to return with a warrant the next morning. Claire barely slept. Around 3:30 a.m., she woke again after hearing a soft clicking noise outside. Click, click, like a camera shutter. She slowly looked toward the bedroom window and nearly screamed. The attic window next door stood open. A silhouette holding a camera stood inside darkness, watching her. Then a camera flash exploded through the night. Claire dropped to the floor instantly. When she looked back, the silhouette was gone. Police entered Luc Morel's house at sunrise. Claire watched nervously from across the street while officers searched room by room. Nearly an hour later, detectives emerged carrying boxes filled with equipment, cameras, hard drives, thousands of printed photographs. One detective finally approached Claire. "What exactly did he send you?" Claire showed him the photo message. The detective's expression changed immediately, because according to police records, Luc Morel officially disappeared nearly 8 months earlier. Claire stared at him in disbelief. "What?" The detective explained. Neighbors reported strange lights inside the attic occasionally after Luc vanished, but nobody investigated further because the house remained locked from inside. Then the detective revealed something worse. Inside the attic, officers discovered hundreds of photographs taken through nearby bedroom windows. People sleeping, eating, changing clothes. Entire years of surveillance. But despite searching the entire property thoroughly, They found no sign of Luke himself, only one disturbing detail. The attic cameras were still warm, as if someone had been using them moments before police arrived. That night, Claire stayed at a hotel across town, but before sleeping, she checked her phone one final time. Another photo message had arrived from the unknown number. This time, the image showed her hotel room door, taken from the hallway outside, and beneath the photo, a single sentence. "You left the curtains open," and Evan hadn't seen the house in nearly 15 years. But the moment he returned to his childhood neighborhood, he recognized it immediately. The same narrow windows, the same faded blue paint, the same upstairs bedroom facing directly toward his old home. And somehow, despite sitting abandoned for over a decade, the lights were on again. The neighborhood sat outside a small coastal town in Ireland. Cold winds, narrow streets, rows of aging homes facing the sea. Evan moved away after his father died when he was 16. Now at 32, he returned only to settle his late mother's affairs before selling the family house permanently. He planned to stay 1 week. That changed the first night. While unpacking boxes after sunset, Evan noticed movement through the living room window, a light glowing softly inside the abandoned house next door. He froze immediately. Impossible. Nobody had lived there since the Callahan family vanished years earlier. At least that's what everyone believed. Evan remembered the rumors vividly from childhood. People disappearing, police investigations, whispers about screams heard late at night. His mother used to forbid him from even looking toward the house after dark. "Keep the curtains closed," she always warned. Back then, he thought she was being dramatic. Now, standing in the same living room years later, he finally understood her fear. The upstairs light inside the abandoned house slowly moved from one room to another, like someone carrying a lantern through darkness. Evan stared for several seconds before grabbing his coat and stepping outside. Cold ocean wind swept through the empty street. The abandoned house stood silent ahead, dark except for the upstairs glow. Evan approached carefully. The front garden was overgrown with dead weeds, while broken shutters rattled softly in the wind. But something immediately felt wrong. Fresh footprints crossed the porch, wet footprints, as if someone recently entered the house. Evan stepped backward uneasily. Then the upstairs light shut off instantly. Darkness swallowed the windows. A floorboard creaked somewhere inside. Evan returned home immediately and locked every door. That night, around 1:40 a.m., he woke hearing footsteps outside. Slow footsteps crossing the gravel path beside his childhood home. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Evan looked through the blinds carefully. A figure stood across the street near the abandoned house, tall, motionless, watching his window. Then the figure slowly raised one arm and pointed toward the upstairs bedroom of the empty house. Evan's heartbeat quickened violently. The upstairs light turned on again, this time revealing multiple silhouettes moving behind curtains. Not one person, several. Evan shut the blinds instantly. The next morning, he asked an older neighbor about the house. The woman immediately looked uncomfortable. "You shouldn't pay attention to that place." Evan frowned. "I saw lights inside last night." The woman went pale, then quietly said, "The lights always come back eventually." She explained that after the Callahan family disappeared years earlier, neighbors occasionally reported seeing movement inside the abandoned house late at night. Police searched repeatedly but never found anyone there. Eventually, the reports stopped, until now. That evening, heavy rain rolled through the town. Evan tried ignoring the house completely. But around midnight, the whispering started, soft voices drifting from outside his bedroom window. At first, he thought it was wind. Then he heard his name clearly. Evan! His blood turned cold instantly. The voice sounded familiar, like someone from childhood. He slowly approached the window. Outside, the abandoned house glowed faintly through rain-covered glass, and standing beneath the upstairs window was a little boy. Watching him, the boy wore old-fashioned clothes soaked by rain, pale face, dark hollow eyes. Then the boy whispered again, "Come outside." Evan stumbled backward in horror because he recognized him. The boy looked exactly like one of the missing Callahan children from old newspaper photos. The upstairs curtain inside the abandoned house slowly pulled aside. More figures stood behind it now, watching. One of them looked unnaturally tall. Another tilted its head slowly toward Evan. Then, the whispering started again. Multiple voices this time, all speaking together from outside the house. "Evan, come back. We remember you." Evan locked himself inside the bathroom until sunrise. The next morning, police finally agreed to inspect the abandoned property after hearing his report. 3 officers entered the house shortly after noon, while Evan watched nervously from across the street. The front door creaked open slowly. Dust exploded into sunlight as officers disappeared inside. For nearly 40 minutes, nothing happened. Then one officer suddenly radioed for backup. Evan felt sick instantly. When detectives finally emerged, their expressions looked deeply disturbed. One officer approached Evan quietly. "The house is empty." Evan stared at him. "What about the lights?" The officer hesitated. "We found active electrical wiring upstairs. But nobody's been inside recently." The officer remained silent for several seconds, then quietly admitted, "We found fresh footprints. Upstairs. Bare wet footprints crossing the hallway dust, leading from room to room, but stopping abruptly outside the old children's bedroom, as if whoever made them simply vanished. That should be the end of it." But later that night, Evan woke one final time around 3 a.m. after hearing movement upstairs inside his own childhood home. Footsteps. Slow footsteps crossing the hallway outside his bedroom. Evan grabbed a flashlight and opened the door carefully. The hallway stood empty, silent. Then he noticed something near the staircase. Wet footprints. Small bare footprints leading downward toward the living room. Evan followed them, trembling. The footprints stopped beside the front window facing the abandoned house next door. Outside, the upstairs light glowed again, and standing behind the curtain was a figure waving slowly at him. Using his mother's voice, it whispered from outside in the darkness, "You finally came home."